My next guests were part of the very first Star Trek prequel series, set 100 years before Captain Kirk's 5-year mission on the original series. Well, now they are joining me today to talk about their show's legacy. Please welcome the cast of Star Trek Enterprise: Scott Bakula, Linda Park, John Billingsley, Dominic Keating, Anthony Montgomery, and Connor Trinneer. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me on this glorious Star Trek Day.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
To this day, Enterprise remains the earliest point chronologically for Star Trek, which makes all y'all the OG Enterprise crew. So I'm wondering what it meant to you at the time, 20 years ago, to essentially be setting the table for the entire Star Trek universe.
It was the hook that pulled me in, to be totally honest. I didn't really feel like I wanted to follow you guys, but the idea of leading off was very, very appealing to me. We weren't constrained by any other rules of the universe, so we could do our own thing. And it was the wild, wild west, and we certainly did our own thing.
So there was this terrific moment when I was sitting here in my home studio, and I was watching all of you pop up. And I was watching your faces, and I was seeing the joy that just flashed across your faces as you saw each other.
Well, I will tell you that the love you are seeing and feeling from us starts with the very first person that started this whole thing for us. Scott, he made us feel like a family. I'm assuming Patrick did that with you guys. And from every single person, whether it was the security guard to craft service, everybody felt the love from Scott. So that's why you feel this and see this.
That's very kind of you, Anthony. I've always felt the same way about the business that I still do today, is that we should be able to have a good time making these shows. This group of people, they were sensational to work with every day. You know, the stress and the strain of the hours that we put in and the difficulties. We got along.
It's almost like you didn't know what you had. It was such a normal experience to go to work. Again, I'll echo what everybody said about Scott. One of the most telling things for me was that at the end of every, and I do this now, at the end of every day, you shook everybody's hand. You know, thanked them for their work and included them in the process. And that was such a seemingly small thing, but it's not, it's huge.
And everybody, they remember it.
Scott, you made those years joyous for us all, my friend. You really did.
Enterprise went on the air shortly after September 11th, 2001. And that was a really different time. It was a really dark time. And Star Trek, we are at our absolute best when we are telling a science fiction story that reflects what's happening around us. And it gives people an excuse and an inspiration to talk about and address things that are really scary or intense. And Enterprise did that with terrorism. You did it with Desert Crossing and The Expanse. And I wonder specifically for you, Scott, do you recall how you felt about it then? And if you have any thoughts about Star Trek continuing to address real issues that face humanity in the 21st century.
Well, the joy of Star Trek has always been that it deals with things in the future that are still going on the planet. So it took us a year and a half, to be honest, to really circle back and get into what happened on 9/11. But I can remember Rick and Brandon calling me into the office and saying, we want to make a change in the direction of the show. My take on our series was that we really started kicking ass about halfway through the second season. And then we were just, you know, wildly, in my opinion, successful as a series in relating our world to what was happening in today on the planet. From then on, for the last 2.5 years that we had. I always attribute that to it all comes from the writers, and the writers were more inclined to write about how they were feeling and how they were dealing with what they were going through in their worlds, and it just felt it grounded our series. It made us different, and it gave us a sense of purpose that I didn't feel, to be honest, that we had from the out of the gate, that we were doing kind of one-off episodes in the wonderful tradition of Star Trek. But all of a sudden we had somewhere to go and a message that we could hang our hat on. And the joy for me in all of this work is in the Star Trek universe has been showing the world the possibilities that we could, and the differences that we can make as human beings. To be able to expand the specifics of what happened on to us and take it into the Star Trek world and introduce us to 5 species that we'd never met before, and how we dealt with meeting those species and the relationships that we developed is, to me, the heart and soul of Star Trek, which never paid attention to what color people were, where they were, what planet they were from. I believe that our show really delivered on that once we got into that whole expanse and Yes, Desert Crossing and all that.
Let's shift gears dramatically. One of the coolest things we get to do on Star Trek is visit the mirror universe. And I'd love to hear any of you, but let's start with Connor. I'd love to hear any of you talk about what your experiences were like doing in a Mirror Darkly.
Hated them.
Did you really?
Yeah, and here's why. I'm trying to get an idea of how to do this alternate universe character. And I do it, and Jim Conway, the director, says to me, he goes, yeah, you just got to give it, more. Go more. And I said, you mean like a pirate? And he goes, yes, like a pirate. And so I get out there for this take, and I just go, rah, 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 rah. And Jim goes, cut, print, moving on. And I was like, no. I was joking. So I had to play that part for the next 3 weeks. just and I just.
Linda, let's just talk about her performance in the Mirror Darkly. Let's just talk about that.
Come on.
About her transformation from this 21-year-old who didn't know her way around the set to the work that she did in that 2-parter just blew me away.
Absolutely badass.
I get probably asked that all the time, and it's the one question that probably doesn't bother me getting asked all the time, because I had so much fun doing it. Even if my character doesn't have growth, I get to now play a different aspect of her. Except for Connor, a lot of us had so much fun doing it was because we just got to shake up the whole vibe of it.
Linda, I wanted to ask you, I wasn't aware until now that you and I both have the distinction of having been the youngest cast member. I imagine it was a little different for you being an actual fully functioning adult woman when I was literally a child. Did it ever create any tension or ennui for you to be significantly young, to be on the young side of things? That was always hard for me.
She was the most mature, however. She was the youngest, but she was the most mature.
It's true. I was definitely the most. No, I think it was mostly about just being so. I was sweaty palms all the time because the enormity, and I don't think people outside understand that beyond the acting, there's so much more that you encounter when you do a TV show, when you're a regular on a TV show, that it's not just the acting. I mean, the acting is the fun part, but there's all this technical stuff. If you just in theater, you don't understand that you need to stay within a certain frame and you can't move. The lighting is on you. And I didn't know any of that stuff. That
was also while we're talking about one of the, so many things that Scott was so wonderful about. Scott was had such a wonderful understanding of the technical aspect of filmmaking that it was like having another director on the set. And I think for a lot of us, his ability to kind of help us recognize that, we might want to adjust ourselves in such and such a fashion to make sure that we were getting our own light or not stepping in our own, in our own dung, in essence.
Dominic, it has come to my attention that you might be a person who has some memorabilia from the set that may have found its way into your possession after wrap. I wonder if that's true.
I do have 2 lovely crystals here. There was one episode which we did in some sort of crystal grove, and I had a lovely chat. What was our lovely art director's name?
You're talking about Herman?
Herman, well done. And And he just said, bring a big suitcase. And I wheeled two of them out of Paramount one afternoon. And they sit pride of place here in the sitting room, God bless. So, yeah, there you go.
No snitching, man. You can't tell how you got it.
Connor, I have had the pleasure and privilege of spending a little bit of time with you at cons. I've watched you interact with our fans. I would love to hear how Star Trek has changed your life and how you feel it has changed the lives of fans, if there's anyone you've interacted with that has stayed with you.
Every convention, or nearly every convention, somebody will walk up to me and say that Star Trek saved their life, actually saved their life. Like they were suicidal. They were, if it wasn't for the next show coming up next week, they had nothing to look forward to. And it was our show, your show, any of the other Star Trek series that had such a positive impact and such a healing impact on their lives. I take great pride in that.
Anthony, have you come across anything that where you feel like, oh yeah, this is why this show endures. This is why fans love this show. This is this is what keeps this show going.
Because of the time that we're in right now, with the racial strife that is our world, growing up in Indiana. And again, yeah, I do address this because it was a part of my history. Growing up in Indiana, the Klan came to prominence in my hometown. So there is a very real, very painful thing that I've had to sit in as far as being a black man in the United States my whole life. And the one place, even as a child, the one place that I did not see that people saw or cared about color in any way, and they were truly embracing everyone's differences, was Star Trek. And I believe that Gene Roddenberry's utopian ideal that we are all the same, regardless of where we're from, what Scott was saying earlier, what planet you're from, whatever it is. People have been hurting in our world since this thing started, since the 60s when it started. Everybody has been longing for something that connects all of us. And it doesn't matter if you're half black and half white, if you're blue, if you're green, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. We are all, it's the human race. It's not a bunch of different races, it's the human race. So I feel like that longing to connect with something so much greater, that connectivity, I feel like, is what has been the enduring thing for me.
It's humbling to when you meet fans that tell you how much your show or the shows in general meant to them and ushered them and held their hand through one of the toughest parts of their lives. A father came to me, his son had been killed in a car accident, and he said, without your show, I don't know what I would have done. And it's if you ever thought you were a silly actor doing silly things, learning silly stuff, and you suddenly go, okay, yeah, that's almost a proper job. Yeah.
I have taken up so much of your time. You have been so unbelievably generous. I have one last question for all of you. Looking back over 20 years, is there one thing that really sticks with you over the 2 decades that have gone since the first time you walked into that set together?
I think, Will, the biggest thing that's been the takeaway for me 20 years after the fact is something that I'm starting to realize, given the current climate too, is how groundbreaking and how important Star Trek was in inclusivity on television. And you can look back and you see, George Takei and Nichelle Nichols, and you see that they really made ground in saying it's possible to show people of color and have it become successful and accepted. And had they not laid that groundwork, it may have taken longer to get where we are, and continue to keep fighting that Star Trek continues to keep standing by that message. People of color exist everywhere and live together, and it's time.
Star Trek in particular has always represented hope. To me, it's as simple as just, hope. that we're going to get through these times, whether it's the 60s, what was going on in the 70s, you know, all these times where we think, well, are we going to get through this? And Star Trek is somehow out there just saying, you're going to make it through because of these things that Linda's saying and Anthony, because of the things that we're talking about. I tend to err on the side of hope as opposed to pessimism, and that we will rise above. I think that's human nature.
We are going through a period of time, and without in any way negating the message of hope that I think Star Trek definitely represents. My only concern sometimes, not with Star Trek necessarily, but with popular culture generally, is that we sometimes can lose ourselves in popular culture to the detriment of the actions that we have to take in our lives, day in, day out, to make a difference in this world. So for me, I always feel like I would like to continue to remind people to connect the vision that they take away from Star Trek with their own need to act on the ground every day to make a difference in the world as it exists.
Be the change you want to see.
And you're spectacular doing this, John. You represent to me somebody who walks the walk, and I always look up to you for all of your endeavoring to do the very thing you're talking about. Not just talking about it, you do it, and I honor you.
John is legit.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't mean that in a self-aggrandizing way. I think it is one of the things that, to me, the show, I like to connect to people when I meet them, to find out if you believe in the vision for the future that Star Trek represents, what are you doing? Because the one thing that has always been my question is, can Star Trek tell us how? How do we get to the place where we put nationalism and racism and intolerance and greed and selfishness aside and put the needs of humanity first? And in the end, you know, it's each of us have an individual decision to make about how we do it in our own lives. And that's sometimes where not just about Star Trek, but just about culture generally. I love TV just as much as anybody, but I also always want, when I meet people who are fans of TV, to ask what it is that TV allows them to take into action, you know?
You all have been unbelievably generous with your time. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you, and I am so honored to be your colleague. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Will.
Happy Star
Likewise,
Trek!
Will. Thank you so much.
Star Trek Day.
Star Trek Day, everybody.
Everybody at home, I'm reminding you now that you can watch all 4 seasons of Star Trek Enterprise on CBS All Access, where you can see even more of this amazing cast in action. And again, this panel and all Star Trek Day panels are happening in support of our Star Trek United campaign. For every single person who tweets the hashtag StarTrekUnitedGives, CBS All Access will donate $1 to organizations who do the real world work of championing equality, social justice, the pursuit of scientific advancements, and making the Star Trek dream real. There are millions of us, y'all. Tweet it, hashtag it. You can do it. I believe in you. Everybody, from one Enterprise crew member to another, thank you again for joining me today.